I think we need to look for every opportunity to mobilize growth. I'm convinced that regional development, and there is of course included the rural dimension, that regional development can make a very important contribution to developing new sources of growth. Why is that? Because it is putting the assets, the potential of each region at the center of the discussion.
There's a continuous discussion, particularly after the crisis, about strengthening the economy without also thinking about what the rural economy looks like and what would have to happen in the rural economy. What the new rural paradigm is to conceptualize a process that was happening already. And what we realized was that it was moving in three important directions. And then we tried to capture those directions in the new rural paradigm. So the debate that we're having now is the new rural paradigm still happening? In the sense that, is it still going in those three directions? Are people still moving from a subsidy mentality to an investment mentality in countries? Are you still moving from a direction where you're looking just at agriculture to a direction where you're looking holistically at the region and what else is happening in rural areas other than just agriculture? And are you looking at a top-down process, or are you looking at a bottom-up process with a multi-stakeholder environment? That is really what the new rural paradigm looks at. Are these three aspects happening? And if they're not happening, why?
The new rural paradigm is about overarching sort of high-level principles. We were just talking about that in the session. The key question comes down to, as you say, how to implement it and how to make the policies happen on the ground. And that's where it's important to gather the evidence base, gather the lessons from different countries and share those so that we can move forward and learn about different experiences in different countries.
Our rural areas are emptying up from people. So to survive there, to get a job, to get services, you have to innovate more and more. So this is a crucial thing, especially in rural areas.
We find that there is still a difficulty in convincing, for example, economy-wide policymakers on the importance of these issues, and not seeing rural innovation as a sort of it's important, but it's more like a secondary issue. We are talking about 20% of our population that lives in these rural areas, sometimes very sparsely populated rural areas. So what can we do to promote development in these regions?
So the question for rural areas is how do we adapt? How do you push up the value of what rural people do so that they're competing more directly with urban areas rather than competing with developing countries? So we have to make investments in people, we have to make investments in firms, we have to make investments in innovation. We've got to find ways to make rural areas work more efficiently.
Rural areas have an intrinsic importance of their own. Even if 75 or 80% of the population and economic activity are concentrated in cities, the fact of the matter is that certain essentials of life, certain public goods, and the basic resources on which a great deal of urban activity depends are found in rural areas. For the very simple reason that to generate growth, innovation has to be linked to skills, to entrepreneurship, to financing. Otherwise, brilliant ideas are created, someone buys the rights and takes them somewhere else to produce. And the difficulty with this is that when you talk about financing skills and entrepreneurship, densely populated places are richer ecosystems. It is easier to be a very small firm in a very big city than to be a very small firm in a rural place. It's easier to get financing. It's easier to identify the human capital needs you have and to get them met.
Every specific rural region has a specific, or could have a specific potential that we have to find in our development process.
The first step is to get people talking and get people working together on solutions to practical problems.
It's a community process, it's a collaborative process. All levels of government should be involved in this process, and all private sector entrepreneurs should be involved in this process. And that means more jobs, more opportunities, and stronger rural regions.